welcome to the Everyday Magic Podcast. I'm Anya Rock.
And I'm Dr. Sophia Trivena.
And today we're going to pick back up where we left off, really diving into 2020 as a year of transformation for both of us. And I'm so excited to hear. I mean, I've gotten to experience the transformation. And I don't think I realized, though, that it was really 2020 was such a big year for you.
Big year.
Yeah. Take us through that. What happened for you in 2020?
Well, it's funny because just before we started filming, your daughter had sent a video from Washington, D.C. where her and her friend were reenacting Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I said to you, I've never seen Hamilton. And you were like, what? And interestingly, 2020, I had been dating someone for 5 weeks. And we really, really like each other and have great chemistry. He's a little bit older, has a couple sons, has beautiful hilltop property in Marin County. And basically I tell him, I know I'm leaving to go away for 5 weeks to 5 countries and maybe even longer, maybe not coming back to this area. And we have tickets to go see Hamilton and it's our last date. So I think it's funny that comes up. And we got there. And when we got there, they said, oh, sorry, we're turning everyone away. We're going into lockdown. And that was the moment so I never saw Hamilton because we got turned away, which is so funny.
To fix that.
Yes, fair.
Yeah.
So we turned around to drive back and he was going to drive me to the airport the next day. I was packed and ready to go. And we were saying goodbye to the relationship too. He didn't want that. And I was okay with it. And basically, it was like, does he take me to a friend's house or do I go to his house? And he's like, come to my house, come to my place, please come with me. And, I've always wanted a partner and wanted that experience. So I thought, why not this is an interesting, is an interesting adventure.
So you're dating, but not living, you're not like, you're staying at his place.
I've known him 5 weeks.
Right.
And I'm still,
you can move fast.
Yeah, right. You're like, sorry, are you married yet?
How fast are we moving in this 5 weeks? You can accelerate quite quickly.
Fair. So, right. I don't have rules around time and structure when it comes to connection. And I can go 2 years with no one or 3 different people in 1 week, as long as the connection is authentic.
So you're dating, you're in the same city.
Okay. So we've been together 5 weeks. I had been celibate for almost a year before that, doing a lot of spiritual up-leveling, where I'd been in Portugal for my year of being an artist. And then with the German.
Yeah.
And me and the German had broken up for 6 months. And we had been together 6 months and broken up 6 months. And then I was living in Portugal happily. And I got guided to leave Portugal and to go move to Marin County and to live amongst 4 other women who all took turns hosting me and had been, some of them had been clients. And we were to meet pretty much daily and spiritually up-level together. That was the guidance we all got. And we sat down as a group and started mining our experiences, what we had gone through as women in divorce and life, and started sort of deconstructing and decolonizing ourselves from our own experience of patriarchy. And a lot of my learning came from this really potent year. And about 9 months into that process, I had been celibate. And I wake up one day and the angels are like, it's time for your next relationship. And I was like, interesting. Okay. And then over the next 2 weeks, I told the women that I keep seeing bicycles. I keep seeing these taller, bigger men. I keep seeing Fairfax. I kept getting these signs. And lo and behold, then the angels say one day, it's time to find him. And they told me to go on this app. And the very first person that came up, I swiped them and that was the person. So it was one swipe. And we went on our first date and talked for hours. And he was 6'6" and he was a bicyclist and he lived in Fairfax. And so all the signs were lining up. And he had 2 teenagers and had been recently divorced and was absolutely lovely. He'd already had a girlfriend since the divorce and that had already ended. And so I went on another retreat with those women for a week, and he came and visited me while I was on the retreat, and we kind of snuck off. And the woman that was running the retreat's like, "Where did she go?" And they're like, "Self-care," which means having sex in his van. Nice. So that had started, and then it was really mature, really lovely, and I knew in my gut that this was not my person. But he was like, I think I found the one. I think you're my person. And I was like, I don't feel that. He's like, I actually feel like wanting to have a baby with you. And I was like, I feel like every time that happens, it doesn't mean have a baby. It means like, why don't we make art together? Why don't we be creative together? So we got together and we painted for a whole night. And he was like, you're right. I just want to like create with you. And I'm like, there's a lot of ways to create with me. So we were 5 weeks into that. We got turned away from, right. And he basically said, I'd love you to come and just move in. And I think I had met his sons. No, maybe I hadn't. And it was really them coming home from their moms, and one's 11 and one's 16, 17, and being like, here's the situation. We're quarantining. She's going to be here. And everyone loved it. It was incredible. The boys took one of the small houses they had on the property and started fixing it up as a feminine space for me. They put all these screws into the wall so I could hang all my jewelry. Like it was really sweet. I would teach all of us yoga. And then his 11-year-old was like, I want to teach us all yoga. And he would kind of adopt my wording and teach us all yoga. And we were all painting together. Like it was really beautiful. And then a few months in, I was doing something really simple, like setting up a video camera so I could teach yoga to one of our mutual friends. And he wasn't in the screen. And I said something like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're in the screen. And he lost it on me and got really angry with me. And my thing is attack. So my pattern with men has been that out of nowhere, they attack me for doing nothing, much like my childhood abuse. So for some reason, from the age of 2 to 3, my biological father decided to unleash his anger on me physically. And I didn't know this. All I knew is that I had nightmares about a man chasing me and trying to catch me since I was little. And no one had the language for PTSD. But I had about as chronic of PTSD as you could imagine. Like every noise, everything was loud and intense and harsh. My nervous system was in constant hypervigilance. And my whole life was managing not being triggered or affected. And I was on top of it a sensitive, intuitive being. So I just feel like I had spent years before being with this man in therapy. I think I was in 12 years of EMDR therapy, which basically has you move your eyes back and forth while you remember the traumatic experience in your body so your body can start to reprogram it. It's an opportunity to be with the experience without running away from it, to let it move through. But it took 12 years of weekly therapy to get through how intense it was for me. And no matter what I did, it seemed every man I brought in had this sort of wanting to unleash on me, even though I'm innocent, the attack. So I said to him, this is a deal breaker for me if I'm doing nothing and you get upset with me. And I've been guided by the angels that when there's a deal breaker on the table, you have the gift you can give someone of saying you have 3 months to eradicate this. And if it's not gone in 3 months, then I'm going to leave. And the hardest part for me is that once you give the deal breaker and they understand it and agree, and he did, and he said, you just don't want to deal with it. And I was like, I just don't want to deal with it. And I'm like, I'm not even saying if it's right or wrong. Maybe there's another woman that you guys want to unleash on each other, but it's not for me. And he said, I got it. And he got a therapist and started doing the work. But then as he told me what he was doing and talking about, I didn't see the needle moving. He was just sort of talking about things, and it never seemed that he was going to get to the heart of where had caused this. And so 3 months later, we really didn't have an incident those whole 3 months. And then 3 months later, it happened again, and it was something really small. This one I can't even remember, but it was similarly small, some way that he felt ousted or disrespected and felt justified in being incredibly angry with me. And all I had done something is like, forget to bring him his coffee or something, like something really small. And I said, this is exactly the thing that we talked about. And I said, I have to really go sit with this. And then interestingly, they had fixed up one of the tiny homes on his property. And I went to that tiny home space by myself. And I said, I'm going to go sleep out there tonight while I think about this. And I had the whole day before the nighttime I was going to sleep there. And I went to a lake by myself. And while I was at the lake, there was these beautiful deer. And I was sitting still and meditating by the lake, and they came up and they stood near me. And everything in me knew, I'm a deer. I am gentle and delicate and nature and peaceful. And that kind of intensity and attack on me and the amount of alcohol he was drinking and the sort of loud boisterousness with his friends. And again, it wasn't wrong, but I was like, that's not me. He's not a deer. He's not a deer, and I'm a deer. We are different animals. And I went home and I got into the tiny house bed and I was asleep. And the next thing I know, I hear, "Bah, bah, 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 bah," and I wake up like terrified. And the door swings open and it's like stormy outside. And there's this huge 6'6" man standing in the doorway, like seeming huge. And I feel so small. And I was like, and it was him. And I was like, "What are you doing?" And he was like, "There was a deer on your deck. I had to chase it away." And I was like, why? Why chase the innocent deer on my deck? That's my family, my kin. And he was like, "I don't know why." And I was like, "I need you to go. I need you to go." And I could tell he was really drunk. And the next morning, I packed up everything first. I put it all in the car first. And then I went to him and I said, "My car is packed. I'm leaving. It's been 3 months." Simultaneously, while I was packing, before I went to see him, I got notice that one of my family members, one of the male family members of my lineage, was in ICU and was probably not going to make it, who had also been an alcoholic, who had the same kind of emotional abuse to another family member. And I was like, oh, I'm healing the whole pattern. Like this, when this person dies, there's no one else with alcoholism and this kind of outbursting on their person in my lineage. He's going to die. And when I leave, this dies. Doesn't it resonate with your story so much? Like you're like, when I'm losing a body part to this, like I'm not doing this again. I was just like, never again is there any man allowed in my field in any tiny way that would unleash on me for an innocence. And actually, I'll go further, that would try to deal with unrest with me with aggression or violence at all, even microaggression. Like I have worked so hard, 20 years of therapy and work, to have the tools to be able to meet any challenge with consciousness instead of attack, that I will not participate in attack. And it's never happened since that moment. And then that's when I went in and told him my grandpa's in the ICU. And I know that this means I'm time to leave. Clearly not my grandpa that we were talking about. And I was like, it's really time for this whole pattern to end. And I remember leaving and he was like, "No, you know me. That's just once or twice. Like, this is my, what?" And his 11-year-old was there. And he's like, "We have to talk to him." And I was like, "I'm willing to do that." And I said, with me leaving has nothing to do with how much I care about you. I had done the research before about what happens when someone like me leaves a family like that. And it was truly like you need to let them know we're still friends. We're just not choosing each other. And it has nothing to do with you. You are the best part of this. Like, right? So I did all of those things. And they walked me to the car. And I was like, the other thing I know it's important is to have like a visit after. And so I said, "Why don't I come and visit and we'll all have dinner?" And we were like, "Yeah, next week." And I did. I came the next week and I brought them a gift and we all had dinner together and hung out as friends. And I spent one-on-one time with each of the boys talking about their school and stuff. And said, "Well, we'll see each other." And maybe we would have, but we didn't. So it ended. And me and him stayed friends. And shortly after, he had another partner and I met her, and they ended up breaking up for the same reason, but for a much worse version of it. So I'll leave it at that. But long story short is that when I left there, it was still COVID. And I really didn't know where to go. And I had a car full of stuff. And all of the friends I had kids and were already deep into their journeys. And they couldn't welcome in another person at this point, right? And I cried. I mean, pulling over on the side of the thing, just like first that I have a family member dying and that's his dying and that it's the same dynamic. It was just so much. And I just was crying and crying and crying. And I was like, "Please help me. Like, please help me." And then the phone rang and it was a woman that I'm friends with that lived in San Francisco. And she was like, "You just crossed my mind." And I was like, "You're kidding me. I'm sitting here bawling my eyes out." And she's like, "Come stay with me." With my car packed, I drove to her place and we stayed together for, I'm going to say, at least 10 days in the same bed. And it was so healing, the sisterhood. Oh my God, so healing. And I told her everything and she was amazing. And it was just when she had a dog. It was just all the gentle. It was you know what? I went to the land of the deers. She was a deer. Her dog was a deer. I got to be in the deer. And I realized how much my nervous system had not been in the land of deers. Just feeling like that could happen. And just the intense, different way of being.
Right.
So I had to leave from her place somewhere at some point. And I asked and got guided to go to a little cabin that was on Stinson Beach, which is in Marin County. And I was like, oh, just rent my own little place. Like, duh. Because I was like, who are you going to quarantine with? And I went to this beautiful cabin. And the crazy thing was, is there was a bigger one that was almost the same price and this very small one. And my guidance was very firmly to go to the small one. It was very small, but it had a beautiful deck looking over the lake. And when I moved in, she told me that she had built it 30 years before to be a Japanese sacred meditation room. It has a name I can't remember, like a dojo maybe, or I don't know, something like this. And that she had papered the floor in the traditional way and that shoes had never been worn in it. And the only thing that had ever happened in it was meditation for all these decades. So I was in that, and it was like deer. Like it was this soft, sensitive place. It was owned by a woman. I was on a nest looking out over nature. Deer walked by and looked in my window every single day. And it was like almost the opportunity. I was craving to be as sensitive as I wanted to be. And it was COVID. And it's almost like for the first time ever, I could be as open energetically. I didn't have to guard. I didn't have to energetically guard. I didn't have to like guard from anyone else's energy. It was just me and raw nature. And not even anyone else was moving. Everyone was away. So it was just like,
the whole
I felt
world
like
slowed down.
Yeah, my system opened and bloomed in a way I'd never experienced before. And as we know, often when we do that, things come up that haven't had a chance to have their light of day. And I was on my other side of therapy. There was actually no more to mine about my father and the abuse that I had had when I was little. My biological father, who I really have only met a couple times in this lifetime.
I think I remember talking to you when you were in that cabin.
Sure.
For some reason, I have a memory of having a phone call with you.
Yeah. I talked to very few people, but you would have been one of them. Wendy would have been one of them. I think maybe that would have been almost it. Like very, very, very sacred, very closed. But what did start happening is past life memories. Have you had a past life memory?
No.
Never.
I don't think so.
Okay. I'd had a number of them before already, but all of these past life memories were, I don't even know if I want to say them because they're so horrible. And once you hear something so horrible, you can't get it out of your mind. It's like a train crash. You don't want to look like, but they were different versions of past lives where I would be like a woman in a domestic prison, or a slavery prison or a sex slave prison situation. And I would remember it, and it would I would have to let it move through me and discharge from my body the same way I'd had to discharge the actual trauma that I had gone through. Going in, feeling it, not running away from it, breathing through it, using my higher self and my strong self to know that this isn't here and now, this isn't happening now, even though my system's saying it is, it isn't, and it's okay. I hold it, I give it love so it can release. So the past life would come up, I remember it, and then it would take me 3 days to recover from it. It was just that hard. Remember when you had the grid taken out of you? Did it take a few days for it, right?
Yeah.
So it was like that. And then 2 days later, another one would come, a different one, and I'd move through it. And so this went on for a month. And I was like, oh, here's another one. And I was like, literally, I'm in this cabin to release whatever programming I have in my biology from thousands of years of it being normalized that I am some sort of imprisoned being that doesn't that's attacked and expected to give anyways. And they started being like, okay, one a day. And then I'd have the day to get through it. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh. And then the next day, another one. I'm like, okay. And I'd say to myself, I'm glad that I'm getting better at doing this because it's happening faster. And I'm like, well, it's hard, but if I can get through it faster, then even better. I clearly have to get through this. And I had been guided to go for 40 days, and I'm often guided to go to experiences for 40 days. Like I was told to go to Egypt for 40 days. Like I'm often, and there's a whole journey that happens. So I was like, okay, I'm like, 25 days in, and now it's like every day. And then they started being twice a day. And then they started being like 3 times a day. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this is consuming. And is this okay? And am I wrong about what's happening? Like, that I'm discharging this? Like, am I just pulling in old strays? It's going to go on forever. And then there was the day that I was down by the beach, and they were coming like every hour. And I didn't even have the energy to get back to the cabin. And I was lying there like, and then they were coming faster. And then I was like, I have to get back to the cabin or I'm going to die. Like, I need water. I need to be in bed. And so I crawled back and I called one of the women that I had been guided to in Marin. And I told her what was happening. And she's like, I know this is going to sound crazy, but I've had babies. You're in labor. And I was like, I just don't think I can do this anymore. Like, they're coming faster and they're so close together. And she's like, that's labor. And I'm like, but I'm not pregnant. I'm just having all these past lives that I have to move through, and it's hurting and my whole body hurts and I can't keep moving them so fast. And what wants to happen? Why is there so much? She's like, okay, that's what you say when you're in labor. We're just going to go with it. You're in labor. And I don't know why, but it landed as true. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I know this is really, really hard. Like, you don't think you have it. I'm like, I can't do it. I have nothing left. It's been days and days. And I was crying. I'm like, I have nothing left. I have nothing left. And she's like, there's a miracle on the other side of this. Push through. And I'm like, I can't push anymore. I've been pushing every day. How can I have to push so much? Like, and she was like, this is what you have to do. You have to just throw your consciousness somewhere where you can do this and do it and push with everything you have. I promise you one last time. I promise there's a miracle on the other side of this. And I'm like,
she's on the phone.
She's on the phone. Yeah, right? We're in video. We're in Zoom. And she's watching me, and I'm writhing, and I'm just writhing, and sweat's pouring down me. And she's like, just push, just push, just push. And I was like, and I like felt all of the past lives come bursting out of me. It's like they all came out at once, and wherever they went, I tried to go where they weren't. And it was just like this energetic, like, lighter space in the sky. And I went there and I watched them all leave, and I watched my body, and it was all clear. And then like I fell back into my body, and I'm telling you, there was like a light, like there was this light being, like this little light being baby right in front of me. And I just was like, oh my God, there's a baby. It's a miracle. It's so beautiful. It's life. Like, and she's like, that's the miracle on the other side of birth. Like, that's it. That's it. I'm like, it's so beautiful. She's so pure. And it was so worth it. And I can't believe it. I got everything out, and she's perfect. And then all of a sudden she like went into my heart, this like light being that had energy, and went to all the way to my toes, into my hands, into my being. And like, I was the light. And I was like, it's me. It's me. It's the me that never was heard. It's the me that, it's me. And we were both crying. And she's like, that's the miracle. You did it. You birthed yourself. And I was like, I don't even know what just happened. And it was the most beautiful experience I'd ever had. And it was like, whoever went through that damage when I was 2 was really gone. Like really, really gone. And it wasn't just what happened when I was 2. It was the me that had lived or taken on that programming that I'm here to talk about changing, that had lived it, that got to be the version of me that was the innocent and the reclaim. And she said, I am going to get you food delivered to your door because that's what you need after you've had a baby. And she said, do you want me to stay with you? And I said, oh no, there's a lot of beings that want to talk to me right now. And so I said, yeah, let's go. And what happened in that series of like me seeing angels is them one at a time and gave me different information. And each one of them had a different message. And those messages ended up playing out for the next 3 or 4 months in sequence, with the very first thing that the first angel said is, you're no longer Shauna, your birth name, which I love my name, Shauna. I never didn't love it. You're no longer that name. Your name is Sophia. And I saw whatever had left go down a bathtub drain. And this was day 40 of, or like maybe a couple of days before the end of it, of my time there. And I remember them saying for the last, they said, you're going to sleep for 12 hours every night to integrate this. And I had always tried to have lucid dreams. And our filmmaker had said, I'd love you guys to talk about lucid dreams. And I didn't think of it as the moment, but this is actually the most lucid dream I ever had.
And what do you mean by lucid dream?
Lucid dream means you're conscious in the dream that you're dreaming. And I had had a stint of lucid dreaming after I had healed from my biological father's abuse when I was 30. And I found him and I had that dream where it took until 2005 for the last of her wounds to heal. So I had like lucid dreamed shortly after that. But every time in my lucid dream, I would try to fly and I couldn't.
I can fly.
You can fly in your dreams?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Fly.
Like how? No, but like I've talked to other people.
Jump off buildings, go from tree to tree.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I know. I don't do it very much actually right now, but when you're talking about this. Anyway.
No, I'm curious. Like seriously, this is a huge deal because I would try to fly and I would just putter a couple inches above the ground and not be able to. Or I'd take a few leaps and I'd stop, or I'd freak out that I'm doing it and I'd ground. I could never fly.
And the lucid dream is like, you're conscious, you're dreaming.
All it is that you're conscious, you're dreaming, and then you try to start controlling it. Right. Yeah. Or you don't, maybe. Yeah. I mean, the first time
in high school was very interested in lucid dreaming and we all like practiced. And
how did you practice?
Just that I feel like when you have that awareness, you're dreaming and you're like, oh, I'm dreaming and I'm going to stay in the dream.
Right.
And I'm not leaving this dream. And
right.
I had lots of flying dreams.
Right.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. I know other people that have them really naturally. I had a lot of trying to have them and I never could do it. Ever.
Interesting.
Yeah. So much so that lucid dreaming then became a sad and painful thing. So I shut it down because all it was trying to fly and not being able to.
Well, you should try again.
Okay, so here's what happened.
Yes.
They said you're going to sleep for 12 hours every night. I did. Literally 12 hours, 3 nights in a row, and then it was time to leave. And the first night was unbelievable. I was so lucid dreaming. I was like, I flew with animals below me. I flew over the ocean with dolphins. I just, anything I could think of. It was the most free, liberated experience. And it was the only time I ever had it. And it was like, I'm really free. I'm really, really free. And when I left there, I felt so empowered, so on fire, so clear. I just felt like I did feel like this, it wasn't like a new me. It was like the real me, the under all the trauma me, right?
It reclaimed you.
To reclaim. Yeah. And like you came into yourself after COVID. I was coming into myself after COVID in this way. And I didn't take the name Sophia at all. I didn't take it seriously. And when my friend came back on to see me after I'd had all these visitors, spiritually, she said, you got a new name. And I said, how did you know that? She's like, I just instantly knew you got a new name. And I said, I did, but it's not really my new name. I have literally said, I don't trust anyone that changes their name. Not realizing like half my friends have done
never.
it.
There's the disdain. Never say never.
Right. The thing that you disdain is the thing you're going to do. Yeah. Disdain it, do it. Yeah. And I didn't change it. And I didn't even talk to anyone about it. I was like not going to be that weirdo person. It had already been hard enough to come out as someone that can see and talk to spirit guides. I wasn't going to change my name on top of it. That was, no. But then I would say 9 months later, the perfect storm. I call it the perfect storm when guidance leads you into something horrible, but that's really transformative. And I was perfectly guided to go to this park at this time. And when I got to the park, I parked the car, but I had to go to the bathroom so bad. And the bathroom was right there, like 5 feet away. And there was no one in this parking lot. So I ran into the bathroom with my phone and my wallet and my purse in the car, which I never, ever do. And it was the perfect storm for all of this to happen. Even the perfect storm for me to not go to the bathroom. I tried to stop to go to the bathroom and I just got, no, keep going. There's a bathroom there. Like I followed guidance into a storm. And when I came out, the window was smashed and everything was stolen. And there was a man in the parking lot. He said, I'm actually a detective, like an undercover detective. And that was the weirdest thing. No cars in this parking lot. A car whipped in, broke your window, took everything and left as if they knew you were there. And I was like, it was the perfect storm. And I was like, that really happened for a reason. And I had to put a blanket down on top of the glass. And I started driving and I was like, why did this? Because I always go to, why is this happening for me? What's the message? And it was like, I just had all my ID stolen. I have to redo my ID. this is probably the time to change my name.
Right.
And I was meeting the women in Marin that I had been co-growing with. And we sat down and I said, something just happened. And I immediately went to why it's happening for me. And I got a message, but I would love the four of you to tap into your intuition before I tell you and tell me what you get this incident was about. And I said, I just had my car window broken and I sat on glass coming here. Tune into that happening. And what do you get intuitively as the reason? And one woman was like, you need to change your name, and not just change it, but change it legally. And that woman that spoke it had maybe 2 months before changed her name to a name that came to her. She said, I keep hearing this name. And I said, well, what is it? She's like, I actually get that you already know it. And I spoke it out loud. And she said, that's it.
Wow.
And when I said it to her, I watched this woman who was about 55 light up like a child in a way I'd never seen in the years I knew her. And I was like, that's clearly your name. Look at how you look and feel. And we actually, all the women went to a house and we all danced. And there's a, what's her name? Florence and the Machine. She has a song that says, say my name. And it was like, say my, like, you know, her lines, right? Yeah. And we were all screaming it for her. And she was dancing in the center. And we were like, claim that name. I didn't care whether she was taking her name or not. I was seeing a woman embrace the biggest version of herself. And I was celebrating that. So she's the one that says it's time for you to change your name, but not just like me. She started using it. She said, like, legally. And when she said it, I had the same experience inside of me that I had seen her have. I was like coming home. It's like, this was always supposed to be my name. How is this ever not my name? This was clearly my name from the beginning. This is the only name for who I am. Like, I couldn't look back. And I knew that I was going to have to do the journey of like coming out with this name change as I had come out talking to spirit guides.
Why do you, what's that little bit of like eye roll, like I'm going to have to come out and it's going to be hard. What's the story behind there?
It's the disdain into doing. It's I had disdain.
The expectation of that what did you come up against coming out? Maybe that's where it actually begins. Like, what happened when you came out as like, I see spirit guides, I see angels. And so you knew you were up against that again. So what was that like to, as you say, come out?
Yeah, it really
from
is.
The PhD, right? Mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
What was that experience? Because it clearly informs this decision to come out with a new name. Right.
Well, we have a mutual friend who is gay and also sees spirit guides. And he said seeing spirit guides was harder than coming out gay. And I don't have that comparison, but I would say, you know, the hard things that I've had to tell my world in sequence probably are like, I got kicked out of my house in high school and I have to live on welfare on my own to finish high school. That was probably the first big, I don't belong. I'm not going to be liked by everyone. I'm going to be looked down on. I'm that person. And then probably the next one was I'm leaving the medical school stream and going into engineering. And then probably the next one was
quitting that company.
I'm quitting my mechanical engineering tech job, which is the top job for someone, you know, and I'm going back to waitressing because I don't know what to do. The next one is I'm getting divorced in my 20s. Then there weren't that many hard ones. I think maybe I'm going to run a sustainability movement for 4 years and not have a proper salary so that I can't really have a family or get a house or all the other things people in their early 30s are doing. I'm choosing to be an unpaid activist over all the other choices was probably the next one. Probably there's some more in there, but like the next one is I've got my PhD and I'm coming out and telling everyone that I see and talk to angels and that's my main profession. And I have cut ties to probably everything I ever did before, like keynoting at Harvard and being a professor at an institution, like, you know, being someone that the state gives the largest grant in state history to. And
it's interesting. They're all really tied to like your identity as the world perceives you. And now you're right, sort of shaking that up and saying, I'm going to stand in my authenticity. I'm going to be who I am. And we're so afraid of people's response. Did you actually experience the negativity of that? I mean, there was a few in there, I'm sure, at some certain points, but was Did you get a lot of real negativity, or was it your perceived fear of it?
I mean, in all those cases, I had some people say the thing I feared most.
Right. Probably the people closest to you.
Sometimes. Looking back, it's the ones who were making the opposite choice at the same fork in the road, who had shut down their intuition. And how dare you announce that you're using it? I'm staying in my marriage. I hate, how dare you leave yours? I have a horrible home life. Like the girl that stopped talking to me in high school because I was now a bad kid who lived on welfare by myself. Her mom treated her the worst, and she was probably the one that should have left the most and done the same thing.
It really forces people to confront their own unwillingness to change.
Right. And the ones that I remember being most shook up about and scared about were like telling my grandpa, for example, like my grandpa lived, this is the grandpa really close to. My grandpa lived in a suite in my aunt and uncle's house, and they were leaving. So I was coming to stay and dog sit, and then I'd get a whole week with grandpa. Dream come true, right? So I take it upon myself that this is going to be the time I come out to grandpa, and I need to come out to him first.
Is this about angels, or is this with your new
angels,
name? Okay.
About the angels. It's just about the angels. Okay. So if we're going back to like when I had to come out about this, and that was coming up again about the name. Good point. I told my grandpa, I want to tell you that this is what I do professionally. And I send him the email that I send clients after I've worked with them. The only thing I ever did is after I'd work with someone and do a session with them, I'd give them an email to forward to one of their friends. And I was only referral, and only through referral and synchronicities did I end up with 150 clients in 25 countries. So it was all very like not public. And I decided to share this email with grandpa. And he reads it through, and then I go to see him and I'm like, what do you think about the email? And he says, I didn't know you were psychic, with fear in his eyes. And he's very Catholic. And just all of a sudden, I felt like he was like very disappointed and very worried. And it was probably the worst thing that I could have imagined. Like my heart sunk into my toes. My one person who is pure and innocent, who loves me so purely, is for the first time ever in my life, I'm looking at him and he's afraid of me and disappointed in me. And it felt really real. And he said, I hope you're being careful. Like, and I said, well, I have, I'm doing consulting and I have legal things in place. And he's like, I'd be really careful with this. Are you sure you want to be doing this? And it was just like the worst thing. And I'm living there right now. So it wasn't quite the same for the next 5 days or whatever that I was there. And it broke my heart. And I was just like, I have to accept this as my path. I'm not shutting it down. And I have to accept that it's hard for grandpa. And that's where we're at. And it sucks. And
he clearly came around.
So I flew from there and I went to Florida, I think, for something. And the moment I landed, I heard grandpa's in the hospital. And he had fallen and hurt himself really bad and was not going to make it through the night. And I was like, this is how grandpa and I end. So I flew right back and I went into the hospital with him. And everyone was around his bed, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and I felt like, you're leaving because you're so disappointed in me. Like I was one of your reasons to stay. I was such a bright light in your everyday. And now you don't want to be here because I'm not a bright light anymore. So if you're like, oh, the last bright thing was like Sophia, but now she's not even bright, so I'll leave. And everyone went to leave at 8 p.m. And I said, Grandpa, why don't I stay? And he was like, okay. And I slept on a rolling chair with my feet on the bed. And I stayed, and I just remember all my energy was focused on him. And I was even holding my hands like this. And I could feel all my energy going from me to him. And in the middle of the night, he woke up and he was like, where's the box? Where's the box? And I'm like, for what? He's like, for all the screens. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I have to find the brown box. And I was like, oh, grandpa's really going down. And then his vitals went down and they all came rushing in. And I was like, oh, this is the end. But then they brought him back. And I stayed in there for a week or 10 days or something with him like this, going in and out. And there was a point where he became coherent. And I said, Grandpa, should we call the priest? Is this it? And he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. And I was like, he's leaving because of me the whole time.
Such a sad story to tell yourself.
It was really, really hard and sad. And I put it aside and like basically just was like, it was about him and it wasn't about me. Even though I had that story in the background, it was like, I just want to be here for what he needs of me. And I was feeding him the way he fed me when I was little. You know, like he couldn't lift his hand and I was feeding him like a little boy. He was talking about Innerkip, the town he grew up in. He's like, we have to go to the Innerkip hospital. And I was like, oh, and he's like, we have to feed the animals. Like he grew up on a farm and it was really happening and going down. And unbelievably, they ended up coming in and doing an emergency surgery and taking the pressure off his brain, big scar on his brain head. And he started coming back. And I started nursing him back. And he was a little boy. He was literally being a 5-year-old and I was taking care of him. And I stayed another 4 or 5 days in the hospital. And my family's like, why don't we bring you a lawn chair? And I was like, that's a great idea. Like, no, we were just so...
Took you 10 days to think of it.
But he came back. And I remember the very first drive we took after he came back, let's say 5 months later. And we were driving in a small town and I had to do a U-turn. And when I U-turned, the car nose was pointed at a storefront. And the storefront said, psychic inside. And I said, Grandpa, remember I told you about that? He's like, yeah. And I said, I know that maybe you thought about it as being like psychic, but I want to tell you that angels come and talk to me. And I think they pick me because I'm a nice person and because I use what they tell me to help people. And people get better and healthy and happy and they become more like their soul. And he said, that makes sense. You're perfect for that. No wonder they chose you.
So sweet.
Yeah. But when I was talking about coming about my name, I'm remembering all of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
And Grandpa's still alive. I have to tell him now I'm changing my name.
How did you take it?
I feel like when we talked about it one-on-one, it was accepted. It was like, okay, just whatever you want to do. You know, you're you. You're always just going to be you to me. And I was like, great. He's like, whatever name you call, you know? And then my mom was the first person I called. And I said, Mom, I want to talk to you first about this. And she said, you know, when I was naming you, I couldn't come up with your first name. And Faith was right there. Your middle name, Faith, was right there. But when I was coming up with your first name, I was going to call you Alicia Ma. And I'm like, well, we're glad that didn't happen. Some things are dodged a bullet there. But she said,
it's a beautiful name. I just can't imagine you with it.
Oh, actually, I think it actually is a pretty name. Just, is it me?
Yeah.
Like, there's no way. And so I was like, that wouldn't have been accurate. And then she said, I had to put something down last second. So my hand started moving and that name came out. And it means still waters run deep. Which I think is true because a lot of what I went through, the amount of trauma I had was so hidden from the world. I was so straight A's and she's pretty unpopular and she plays the sport. She's good, right? There's a lot of she's good.
There's a lot of masking trauma with accomplishment for both of us and for a lot of people.
Yeah. When I was doing math, my brain wasn't traumatized. Like it was literally a survival mechanism, not just for an outside approval, but from my brain. There's a trauma place that wasn't activated if I was with people and connecting and partying and having fun or doing math in school. So I did those things or playing sports. So for me, I know it wasn't like then I'm a good person, then they're going to like me. It was more so like, then my brain's not in constant trigger mode. And as soon as I was alone, it was like panic attacks, like literally physical panic attacks. So it was just like anything to not go to that place. So
you tell your mom.
I tell my mom and she tells me that. And it seems like she's really supportive and understanding. She is. She actually is really supportive and understanding in the conversation. I'm like, whew. And I tell my dad and he says, you're not changing your last name, Trivena, are you? And that's his last name. And I said, no. And he's like, okay, great. I'm like, no, there's still a Dr. Trivena in the family. Like, you know, and I really feel connected to Faith and Trivena. And my mom's really connected to Faith. And she's like, you're not changing your middle name, are you? And I'm like, no. So both of them tell me that and they're not tied up about my first name. And my sister was like, I don't really know you as Sophia. And interestingly, she had called me to tell me something that she had done to change her life in a pretty interesting way. And she asked me, I don't want you to judge me. Please don't judge me. And I said, absolutely not. And she told me, and I was like, I don't judge that. It's wonderful. And I said, I have something to tell you. I changed my name. And she's like, I don't like that. And she like instantly judged me. She's like, I don't like that. I don't know you as that. And we've never actually really been connected since I told her. I would say like the disconnect happened sooner than that. And we both know it. So I talk about it openly. Like we both know we don't have the connection we used to. And for me, that conversation was the real severance. We've really never had a conversation since. My sister did say one wonderful thing in the conversation. She said, what does Sophia mean anyways? And I said, actually wisdom. And she said, well, that actually makes sense. And that touched me. And I put that part in the Facebook post that I talked to my mom first, I talked to my sister, and it's all there. And then I don't know how it happened, but I came out and I told the whole story. I told about the going to the cabin. I told about all the past lives. I told about the angels coming to me and giving me the name. And I also had cut my hair, and I decided to let the gray grow in at that point. And I said, this is me now. I've cut off all that dead hair. I am letting my hair grow in, and this is my name now. And I think I titled the post like When Divinity Gives You a New Name. And it was this coming out post. And I think I got like 350 likes and hearts, and I got private messages from all sorts of high school friends going, this is amazing. You found your voice. Thanks for sharing this. It was nothing but celebration. And I was so blissed out, and it was like, oh, that was so worth it. That was so good. And it was also that I embraced this version of myself, this non-traumatized, really empowered version of myself.
It sounds like too, you were really unapologetic in your claiming of that name, right? You weren't looking for permission. You weren't looking for approval.
True.
You came out and said, I've made this choice. And there's always going to be people in our close world who have opinions about it.
Yeah.
Sisters.
Yeah.
Right. But it really sounds like you just said, this is it.
Yeah.
Know me, love me, accept it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really, really, really beautiful. And I started noticing other people in my Facebook community, which is, I don't know, 5,000 or something, starting to post about their claiming of themselves. Like I saw someone say, I just want to share that I'm in an open polyamorous relationship. And if anyone would like to date, I finally want to be open about it and be like, I'm wanting to connect with more people. And he wrote me after and said, I wrote that after I saw your post. Like, I'm tired of hiding parts of myself and I want to be out in the world. And it was really empowering. Now all of me was claimed and out. And I had shared a really intimate story about the lucid dreaming, all of it. Like, and just to have it be so well received, and especially from high school friends, it was really, really, really incredible. It was really amazing. And then I went home to visit, and I was having lunch with my mom, and she told me that she felt it was really disrespectful for me to have changed my name, and that she was walking in our hometown and overheard someone say that they saw a Facebook post about my name change, and that's how she found out. And I said, actually, I called you first, and I actually wrote about that in the Facebook post that I talked to you first. So that's actually not true, and it's alarming that you remember it that way, and also you celebrated it, but now you're disappointed by it. And my mom and I have not been close since that conversation. So I could almost say a couple people in my close family have distanced because of this change. Maybe similar to when you were getting divorced and your husband said, you are changing and I don't like it.
Sure. And some friendships, right? People will fall away as we change and grow. Some friendships have changed or aren't as close or just aren't aligned anymore. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right. And it's harder when it's really close family that we long for that intimacy. We talk a lot about this with our mothers and father, and maybe we want that intimacy, but learning how to have a different level of intimacy. And I've watched you, I think it's beautiful, and the permission you give people by claiming that, right, as your name, like really, who cares?
Really,
why should anyone have an opinion?
Right. Like when we were watching the final Taylor Swift concert at home in my living room, and the girl that was filming it and live streaming it said, Taylor, if you don't wear your green dress tonight, I'm canceling you. And I'm like, what?
Right. Yeah.
Like, if you change your name, I'm canceling you. If you start talking to angels, I'm canceling you. But interestingly, I'm just realizing right now that the way this still shows up is, remember we met that woman at a conference recently that said, I'm married to a Canadian man and he has all these Canadian men friends that you
Single Canadian men friends
that you two Canadian women should meet. You should all come over for dinner sometime and you can meet them. And we're like, that sounds so fun. And then we didn't hear from her. The first thing I said is I gave her my business card and it says I'm an angelic channel. She probably looked at that and said like, I'm not introducing someone that does that to my friends.
Right. And I said, that's a ridiculous story.
But my story, even when I see a man look at me across the room, I'm like, soon as you know that I'm an angelic channel or a mechanical engineer or a CEO, or there's this list of things that are going to go, ooh, and it's not theoretically, it's because it's happened so many times. Right. So it's like in being this full expression, it narrows the field of the resonance, and maybe that's not so bad.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure everyone has their version of that. I know women that have said to me, I chose to have 4 children that are all under the age of 10 and I'm single. No one's going to want to date me. Although I then saw a man come into her life who adored her and all her children. So all these stories we have that make us undateable, even though there might be factually, like 10 men turned you down, or J.K. Rowling that submits, her book to so many publishers and gets no. You can have a lot of factual experiences that say, this isn't okay and I'm not down with it and you're not dateable, you're worthy of rejection, or like not for me, doesn't mean there isn't one person that is.
You only need one. Yeah. And like your dream where you left the party that wasn't for you, you actually don't need to stay at the party full of people that's not for you. Right. It's okay that resonance field narrows.
Right.
Because you are in the full expression of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that Grandpa, like when he had an idea of what it meant for you to talk to angels, right? Oh, you're psychic. And he had his own story about what that meant.
Yeah, the Catholic story of that's probably really bad.
Sure. I mean, there's so many overlays of how people have their own perception of what that means versus like when you really just said, this is what it means to me. This is why I believe it, my experience of it. And he was like, oh, that makes sense. It took away all the mystery or the fear around it for him.
Yeah. Well, I remember one of our friends in Toronto 20 years ago, her little brother came out as gay to her very traditional parents. And she said, I was really proud of him. He held their hand through it. They were so upset and cried. They lamented. He was the strong one. And I think, he was 18 or something. Right. And I was like, I still don't even have my head wrapped around that one.
Yeah.
But so many times the one that changes, even though it's so hard for them to do the change, has to go into being the strong one for the others that are reacting to their change. It's so hard to change, let alone handle everyone else's reaction to your change.
Experience of your change. Right. Which I don't see you doing. I don't see you managing other people's experiences. You've been very, right, that is, again, you're leaving the party of non-resonance.
I think ever since I've been given my name, Sophia, I haven't. I think that was part of coming into the full expression.
Right.
Like, how
all those old, I almost, when you were talking about the past lives, I almost saw like entities leaving as well, right? Like just taking on.
Old codes.
Yeah.
Just old codes that are in the biological programming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it definitely felt like lives I had lived. It didn't feel like other entities, et cetera, but it felt like we bring our generational stuff in our coding. And we also bring, I know we bring past lives into our coding factually. So for me, it was like, it was everything that had come along. And why was it there in the first place? I have really been born to illuminate patriarchy for what it is so that we can all transcend it together. And how am I going to do that if I hadn't lived all those past lives and come into a life where I could release them and then talk about the other, what's beyond it? Yeah.
So when you look back, you share that story and you really kind of mine for like, what was the meaning? Why me? And think about all the people out there who are maybe thinking about being in their full expression. What would you say?
I always say that your trauma is your doorway to purpose. You don't go through something that horrific and almost unsurvivable and survive and not learn something so powerful that it is the crux of literally how you touch the world and make your money.
Right. And another way of saying that is like where your wounding is where your gifts are.
Totally.
That there is, if you can tend to the wound, if you can not sort of live in that open wound, if you can really do the healing, your gifts lie there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And everyone I work with, when they talk about whatever they went through, I'm like, I understand. I mean, I remember the woman who was the somatic therapist that helped me physically release the memories, like the body memories of that 2-year-old that was being physically hit so hard. She was touching me and I was reliving it and I was shaking, and she whispered in my ear. She told me what happened when she was 9, interestingly 9, and it was horrible. And she's like, this is what happened to me when I was 9. And because I knew she had gone through that, I could surrender. I was like, oh, sister, you've been there and you can hold me in this. And then I turn around with my clients and I'm like, it's okay. This happened to me. And that goes, oh, okay, I can surrender into telling you. And you know what it is? It's that you're not going to have to manage me. That's what it is. Like I tell my mom or I tell someone else that they haven't gone through this journey, then I'm not only holding it myself, I'm holding it with them and for them. But someone says I've already gone through that, I'm like, oh, you can hold yourself in this. So I get to have the experience. And I think that's natural. And I don't actually blame my mom and my sister or anyone for having the reactions they have. And they're not going through this. And I have to go through this, and I need to be with those that are like you that say, I've been through it too. It's okay. You are allowed to have the experience without managing mine, which allows my system to actually heal. And I think that's what we do as coaches. And I think that's what this woman's post touched me so deeply when she said, a coach really doesn't just go and get training. They go through the fire of initiation themselves. Because then you become coded with that transformation and can help others through it. But I've never put it together why. It's that you don't have to hold their experience of your experience.
Healers, coaches, medicine, women, right? There is wisdom to be gained from life.
Yeah.
Right? Sharing our lived wisdom.
Yep.
And to know that you can only do it by living.
Yeah.
And by having these initiations, these codes.
And I had this really incredible experience. So after I found my father when I was 30 and confronted him in that, this is what I've been living with, and I came to find you so that I'm not a 2-year-old remembering you, but I'm a 30-year-old meeting you so that my being can heal. And it did from that experience. It was like shortly.
You had never seen him since?
Never seen him since.
Since you were a small child?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I was 30 and I had gotten the nightmares sort of under control, that they didn't happen all the time. But I was visiting a friend in Costa Rica and the nightmare came back really strong. And he said to me when I woke up screaming and he was holding me as a friend, he was like, I think you need to find your father and face him as a 30-year-old. When's the last time you saw him? And I said, when I was 3. And he said, you need to see him. And I said, no one's seen him since the 70s. And he said, where's the last place they saw him? Or that you knew of him? I said, somewhere in South America. And he said, you're closer than you've ever been. And I said, what are you proposing? And he said that in the morning we get on my motorcycle and we drive south to find him. And I said, on your motorcycle to South America? And he said, what do you think, Turkey Lurkey? And the crazy thing is, Turkey Lurkey is code word in my family because it's what my grandma called the turkey Thanksgiving. It means someone has come to get you and you need to go with them. So we had a whole bunch of safe things with my family. So like my parents when we were kids, they were like, if anyone comes to get you and says that we've been in an accident, only go with them if they say Turkey Lurkey. If they don't say it, run to the nearest adult. If they do say it, go with them without question. And he says, what do you think, Turkey Lurkey? And I'm like, I have to go with you without question.
Wow.
And I called my mom and I told her, I said, you're not going to believe this.
He said Turkey Lurkey.
Matt's proposing that I get on his motorcycle. And then he said Turkey Lurkey. And she goes, oh, you have to go. And I was like, wow. I know. And she's like, I'll pay for your bills. And I was like, thank you. And she's like, I'll go with you if you want me to. I never know which version of my mom I'm going to get, but that was the version where she was like, I will support this in every way. And I was like, thank you. And anyways, I got the next morning, we packed one backpack with a soccer ball on top, bungeed onto a makeshift wooden thing on the back of this Yamaha something 850, the biggest motorcycle I'd ever seen. He was huge too. He was like 6'5". Matt, yeah. You remember Matt? Yeah. I found a picture of us and it was the three of us
we made that like love dough.
We made that love roll. He taught us how to make a pizza love roll in 2003.
Something like that.
Because I was born in 73. It was my 30th birthday. And we got in his motorcycle and I said, so what do we do? And he's like, you're going to find him. And I'm like, why? And he's like, because you're intuitive. I'm like, I am. And he's like, you're dreaming about him. You're connecting. You're going to find him. And we got in his motorcycle and we started driving south and it was through all of beautiful Costa Rica. And then he would be like, where do you want to stay tonight? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, we don't have cell phones. We don't have GPS, anything. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, feel what you want to feel. Where do you want to be? And I said, oh my gosh, cozy, a fire, like a soft bed, a good pillow. He's like, feel it. And I was like, feeling it. Okay, feel it. He's like, fill your whole body with it. I'm like, okay. And he's like, soon as you feel like we're supposed to turn, tell me. And we were driving. I'm like, what is he talking about? I don't know. Like, there's no way. Oh, Matt, here. We gotta go down here. And then we'd go down there and then I'd do it again and we'd do it again. And we'd pull up to this warm light coming out of this beautiful adobe home. And we'd pull up and I'd be like, I'm like, can we stay here? It looked like a little house, like all the other little houses kind of thing in the middle of sort of like a field. And they're like, yes, we have an inn right here. And like, there's the room. And we get in the room and it feels the way I felt. And I was like, what is that? He's like, it's how it works. And Matt just worked this way.
Right.
He'd always just worked this way. And he taught me how to use intuition and what I wanted to navigate the energy to find the thing. And that's how we were going to find my father. And it was a multi-month, multi-country, another universe of being surrendered on a motorcycle for 5 hours every day, crossing borders, getting stuck in Colombia. I mean, my memoir tells the long version of this. Yeah. But it was like, I had to come home from that trip and say, I'm a different person. And you
can't take that trip and not be a different person.
I couldn't go back to Toronto. And I walked back to my apartment after living out of a backpack and I had clothes that had tags on it still. I was like, I'd been wearing the same 10 things. Like, I was like, who needs all this stuff? Who needs... I can't just, the cell phone, I was just looking at, we just gotten cell phones. We're just starting to get them then. I was just like, what is this? Like, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was having dreams and I was having knowings and I knew how things worked and no one spoke that language. And I was just like, all the people I loved, they don't know any of this. I can't explain it. Everyone thinks the world is flat and I've sailed around it. And I was like, I have to move to British Columbia. And I did. And you know how that went on. But so many changes that I have to break my whole community because I wouldn't say outgrew. I just grew differently, right? Like they were growing into buying houses and getting married. And I was growing into living life entirely by intuition and connecting with angels and living by guidance entirely in ways that made no rational sense.
Right. And even moving to Hawaii, you were like, it made no rational sense. I'm guided to Hawaii. I'm supposed to do this degree and I'm going to get a PhD. Like you've really always done that.
Yeah. I mean, that opened 20 years ago. And within 2 years, a psychic told me, you're going to go get your PhD. And I fell off the chair and I couldn't talk for 3 days. But I knew, just like getting the name Sophia, I knew it was right. When I really tried it on, first I was like, no. Just all the no's, all the thinking about all the constructs that would have to crumble for me to do that. And where's the money going to come from? And what am I going to study? And who's going to pay for that? And like, what job? How am I going to have a baby with that? How am I going to have a family? Just all of the structures that have to die for that glimmer that's handed to me. And I just remember trying it on eventually. I did everything but try it on. Much like the name Sophia, I did everything but try it on. I spent 9 months with the name being given to me by the angels. Take on this name. It's who you really are. And only after my window gets smashed and all my ID stolen do the ladies say to me, why don't you try it on? And I have the experience I saw in this other woman of elation.
So do you not wait for the window to be smashed anymore? Do you...
So I always I want to learn by consciousness, not crisis,
Right.
as you know. And so every time,
over time.
Right. So I wanted to shorten the distance between the crisis and the knowing to there's no crisis.
Right.
And I just have the knowing.
Just a glimmer.
And
I'm going to try it on.
Yes.
Make the move.
Right. And I will say that when we got guided to co-create Sofanya together and to create a company together, instantly I was flooded with, oh my God, I did manufacturing back when I worked in tech and I never want to have a pager again. And I never want to have material things, bottles that we created in the landfill because of me. And the last partnerships I had blew up, and I love Aine. I don't want to blow up. Like the cascade was right there of all the things that I could wrestle against. Like I don't want to tell my grandpa I do angel work and I don't want to come out about a name change and be that world. And my training has been to shorten the distance between the glimmer of possibility and the guidance, the avalanche of what ifs and destruction of what's been, and the beauty of embracing it and swan diving into the grandest possibility of it. And I will say in that moment, I saw that avalanche and I just jumped into the light.
Swan dive.
I swan
Very
dove.
elegant.
Like the second it was like, oh, we're meant to do this together, like 50-50. And I was like, yeah. I saw it all and I just looked the other way and was like, yes.
Similarly to how in that birth, you took your consciousness to another place.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Totally.
You were like, okay, all of this is happening. I'm going to take my consciousness over here and be with the possibility.
Yes.
And be with that light being.
Yes. And you have birthed, like you've actually given birth to children. Were you focused on the beauty of the birth while you were in all the pain?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to be. It's really an initiation, especially the first one because it was really long. It's similar. I mean, everything you were saying, just like, it's like, I am going to break open and I'm just willing to shatter, because I literally was like, you can't go back in. You have to come out. We're past the point. And yeah, it took everything in me, all the resources I had, all the strength, but birth is an initiation.
Did you feel
motherhood.
Like it was a shattering?
Yeah.
What was shattering?
I mean, all the old versions of me, to step into motherhood, I have to let go of being just a girl, a woman. I think it really prepared me in a way that when I talk to mothers, expectant mothers, like you can't prepare them for where they're going to need to dig into. And especially I chose to do it without medication. I did it at home.
You didn't have any painkiller or anything?
Nope.
2 natural births?
2, yep.
Why did you choose that? I was like, when I was considering having a baby, I'm like, put me under, I'm having a planned C-section. Like from the second I started thinking about it.
I was, I really just feel like this is what women are created to do. And I didn't want to disconnect from the experience. I wanted to reclaim that wildly natural process.
And was it worth
birth.
it?
Absolutely.
What made it worth it?
I mean, my incredible daughter, my incredible son, the process, the connection, and I have no opinion or no judgment of anyone's choice.
Like when I said I don't want to do Botox doesn't mean I judge people that do Botox, yeah.
And I do think that, as our friend Gertrude talks about, like the women have been taught to be disconnected from the process of birth, and they're told you're not going to want to feel that. You're going to want an epidural, and it's mostly because the nurses don't have enough time. There's not support. There's not enough resources and support and woman power to support the birthing woman.
Oh boy.
And so women are kind of told like, oh, you don't want to feel that. And I just knew, my mom was in birthing. She was not for a home birth, but she respected my decision. And I read people like Aine Gaskin, and I read about the millions of years that women have been birthing and the ways to support. And it was the most beautiful, and it's like a diamond being made. Like it was intensity like I'd never known, sensation like I'd never experienced. And I had sort of all the hypno birthing, and I had breath ready, and I was kind of ready with all my affirmations, and it went way deeper than that.
So you felt like you were so prepared?
Reborn too, right? I think mothers are reborn as you were in this experience. It's like if we give ourselves permission to be fully in the experience, I believe becoming a mother can be a rebirth.
It makes perfect sense. It really does. It is a totally new era. Mm-hmm. Like there's a being there that you're never not going to be connected to no matter what happens.
Yeah.
That didn't exist before that. I don't even feel like there's enough at all cultural structuring to hold that. Seems to me from the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite an initiation. You know, I'm remembering actually a flashback from the conversation with my sister that I did tell her the story, the whole story. Mm-hmm. And I do remember her saying, you actually got to birth. And she has a son. She's the only one of the 4 children in my family, like my 3 siblings that had a child. And but she had to have a C-section, and she got really like disconnected from it. Like they put up a screen and she couldn't see down. And she said, you actually got to birth more than I did. I remember that was a beautiful part of the conversation, and it means wisdom. That makes sense. Those were the 2 really beautiful parts of the conversation.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah. So she really recognized it as a mother that I had got to have that experience in some way. But I feel like, okay, so if we've talked about all these like self-birthings and these initiations and how we take this forward, I feel like one important thing I want to share is that after I met my biological father when I was 30, who was definitely the cause of all that trauma and having to overcome and everything, I remembered being, I don't know, the between lives, like reviewing my last life and planning for my next life with my spirit guides. And I didn't even know who that was at the time. Like I didn't understand it. And I was sitting at a desk with a big book, and I was showing my biological father the plan I had for this life and what I wanted him to do. I want you to hurt me this badly, this young. Don't give me time on earth to know a difference. Like break me physically, emotionally, mentally right away. And then I'll find my way back. And because of that, I'll be able to do this. And if you don't do this, I'm not going to have this life plan play out. And I could feel his love, and he loved me. Oh my God, I don't know if I've ever felt a love like that, how much he loved me. And he was crying, saying, I will not play that role for you. I will not do that. And I'm like, but then how else am I going to do it? And I was begging him, and I was standing strong. I was like, I can handle it. You can do this. We have to do this. You're the only one. Who else am I going to ask? I have to do this plan. And if you don't do it, someone else is going to do this plan. And then he was like, if someone has to do that, then I want it to be me. I don't want it to be someone else. And he signed the contract. And I came out of it, and I was like, what was that? And I always remembered it. And then years later, I found him, I'm going to say 10 years later, at least 12 years later, someone introduces all these books. Dr. Michael Newton and Dr. Brian Weiss each have like 5 to 8 books each on all these regressions they did in their medical practices, and they're top medical doctors, Yale, Harvard, Princeton trained. And they would regress their patients to do healing to childhood, but all their patients kept slipping into in between lives where they're planning their life with their spirit guide and talking to their closest soul family, begging them to do the most traumatic things to them. Exactly what I had remembered. And when I had that memory, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to be able to validate what I saw, except I feel my father's love, even though he did all of that. I feel that love. And it was the only thing I had to validate it. They showed me a love he had for me, and I could feel it. But then when I read all these cases, and I think one of them has 7,000 cases of this. This is not small. And you can read any of these books by either of these 2 people. The Destiny of Souls by Dr. Michael Newton's my favorite. I asked my biological father to do this so I could live this life.
Do you think that's what they mean by soul contract? When you have a soul contract with someone?
Yes.
That's sort of a word that floats around, or a phrase.
Yes. I think I've read every book I can find in it. I'm going to say I've read a solid 22 books.
Have you researched this?
Yes.
It's kind of your thing.
Many things, yes. This is one of my things. Well, once you have memories and experiences like this, you're just like, I can't read enough on
and also this is where you bring that academic and science piece to the spiritual, to what seems right, intuition. Do we all have it? Do we all follow it? Do we all have spirit guides, right?
Yeah.
What is a soul contract? Like, I think that's an interesting overlay is you bring a scientific and PhD research brain to something that can seem, right? It's just something that's more mysterious, but there's actually research and there's actually documentation. And I love that overlay that you bring.
A lot of people say that. I think there's a lot of people that have this wisdom without needing the scientific overlay.
Right. And but it's great that you have it.
And I just am a person that needs it.
Yeah.
Because I was a scientist for 30 years and I've had this for 20 years. So I'm always, it's the lens to which I approach it. But one of my favorite passions is the history of science and how things were discovered. And so many pivotal scientists had experiences of intuition, including Einstein. He said, I would have a question, I'd play the violin and the equation would float to me and I'd see it and I'd write it down. Edison said that he would hold metal things in his hands and he would meditate on a problem so that when he fell sort of asleep meditating on it, the metal things would fall and hit the ground and wake him up and he'd have the answer. Like they were all trying to tap into their intuition to get answers. And a lot of our most prominent things that are like the foundation of electricity. Like Faraday, envisioned electricity lines. No one could understand them, but he didn't have the math to explain them. And then Maxwell came along with his education. It was like, here's the equations to what you see. And then 100 years later, they can do the experiment and prove it. So there's always been scientists who are willing to listen to intuition and feel it and know it and then go looking. And I'm like that. I'm like, I had that memory. I'm not forgetting it. And then I find the 7,000 cases that back it up. And I've been doing that my whole life. And I'm like, because once both my intuition and my intellect know, it's truth. I have sailed around the world and it is round. And what you're going to do with that, it's yours to, but I know reality.
You're not going to manage their experience.
Nope.
Just going to be in the full expression of yourself. And you're knowing.
Word. Yeah, that's where...
And that, my friends, is lived wisdom.
That is being 51 years old. Yeah. Yeah, and I know 30-year-olds that have this too.
Yeah.
And I had this at 30 with some things. So it's not always age, but it is lived wisdom.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It was really a beautiful journey. Thanks for taking us on the journey.
Thank you.
I think I've said, as your friend of 25 years, there's still parts of your story that I'm learning, right? I think there's so much when we're in each other's worlds, or for so long we were in each other's worlds, but from a distance. And it's always, I get another layer. I get more nuance. I get more understanding. And I love that.
I love it too. Thank you.
I'm really grateful for you sharing, very vulnerable. And I know that people listening that are wanting to express who they really are, right? I hope it gives them permission.
Me too.
To be in their fullest, most beautiful expression and not manage anyone else's experience.
Me too.
And that is the Everyday Magic Podcast. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you next time.